All right, folks, let's go ahead and get started in this class. The Canon 6D is Canon's full-frame camera. It's kind of their entry-level camera. And it is a camera that I've been kind of interested in because the reviewers and the people who write blogs about cameras have not been overly excited about. And that's because the camera is not, let's say, class-leading, or it doesn't offer anything that's new, that's never been done in photography. But it offers a really solid set of features that I think most photographers are going to be totally happy with. And so while it may not be the most exciting camera to write a review about, it's a great camera for going out and shooting, and it's got a lot of great features. And we're going to dig in right now and find out what all those features are. So let me tell you a little bit about the way this class is going to work here. We're going to have a few different sections on this class. We're going to start off with a little overview about what this camera is. Then we're going to get into some basics. And I know a lot of you already have the experience and you're going to know these basics about sensor size and how the sensor works and so forth. But we're going to cover that for everyone else who would like a little bit of that information. A big section of the class is the camera controls. This is where we go through the outside of the camera. We look at all the buttons, dials, levers, and we talk about what they do and how you would use them and when you would use them. The second half of the class is the menu functions. We're going to go through the menu in detail. I'm going to tell you about what the features do, where I would set them for different types of photography. And then we will end the class with camera operation. Once we know how to work all the little bits and pieces, how do we put that all together into different types of photography? So I'll give you some recommended settings for different types of photography, like portrait photography or landscape photography. How do you set up the focus and exposure for each of those in there? And so got a good complete class ready for you here. To start with, the camera has a relatively large instruction manual, and it's impossible for me to cover every bit of detail that is in the instruction manual. I'm going to be concentrating on the features that are most important for manual operation and for getting the highest quality photos from the camera. So from time to time, I may reference the manual as that's a good source of additional information or specific compatibility with other devices. But we're going to cover most everything a general photographer will need to know about the camera right here in this class. Now, this is a camera class, which means we're talking about this particular camera, and there's lots of other information if you want to be a good photographer. I have a couple of classes here at Creative Live. Creative Live, of course, has lots and lots of different classes on photography. So if you want to know more about photography, there are many other classes. I have a nice little short starter class for anybody who wants to quickly get up to speed on the basics of photography. I also have a more in-depth class, the fundamentals, for anyone who really wants to dig into the photography aspect beyond just the operation of this particular camera. So check those out at your leisure. So if you are new to Canon, Canon's been around for a long time, that is for sure. They started making little rangefinder cameras way back in 1934. Their original name was Canon, by the way. That's their official logo there that they used many, many years ago. Canon got started with SLR cameras in the entry level. They just made basic entry-level cameras for average consumers, and then they started getting more professional. And so in 1971, they came out with the F1, which was a competitor for all the sports photographers out there. A very good camera with that. Important date is 1987, because that's the date that Canon introduced their EOS lens mount, which is what the 6D Mark II uses. So you can use lenses back to 1987 that are in the EOS lens mount. And so they made a big changeover because they saw where the future was going with electronics, and they wanted to get a system that was more adapted to the future needs of cameras. And then finally in 2000, they brought out their first mainline digital camera that had interchangeable lenses, the D30, and this is a descendant of that of some sort. And so they've been making many, many advances since then. But if you look at the camera design really hasn't changed that much. It's something that Canon's been working on for many, many years. And so for people, once again, those reviewers who look at the camera, they kind of, looks the same as the previous versions of cameras, and that's because this is a design that they have found that people are very happy with and works really, really well. And so that's the reason it looks the way it does. So EOS stands for Electrical Optical System. One of the great things about having a Canon camera is there's lots of different choices of cameras. If you need a second body or somebody else needs a recommendation, they have a big family of cameras. They have a lot of different lenses and they have a very complete flash system. And so it is the largest camera system available today. And so for versatility reasons, Canon is a very, very good place to be in the photographic world. Now, the 6D Mark II is a full-frame camera, which we will talk more about, and it is the least expensive Canon camera currently that offers that full-frame sensor. The original 6D came out about 5 years prior to the 6D Mark II and has been a good, solid performer since then, and so now we have updated features and a lot of technology in this camera, and it is a step above a lot of the crop frame cameras as far as the image quality that you're likely to get for a lot of different types of photography. So, good solid performer overall. All right, in the instruction manual there's all sorts of warnings about what not to do with the camera. In short, you could probably just say don't be stupid with it. It is an electronic device that can break somewhat easily if dropped or not handled properly. A couple of things that people do have questions on is the weather resistance of the camera. Now, it is classified as dust and drip resistant, which means they have a lot of O-ring seals on the different openings of the camera. However, they also say the camera is not waterproof and cannot be used underwater. I think that last part is pretty obvious. But you want to be careful if it's raining outside, how long you stay out in the rain and how hard it's raining. And so the first part is how hard is it raining? If it's a light mist, yeah, you could probably be out there for an hour or so before you might encounter a problem. But under heavy rain, if you need to go out shooting in this, I would recommend finding a covered place to shoot or using a rain cover over the camera to protect it from any sort of heavy rain or water situation. Canon is not liable for damage if used with non-Canon accessories. So Canon doesn't want to be held accountable if you are hooking up all sorts of crazy contraptions to the camera. For the most part, the devices that you can hook, it's going to be fine with pretty much all the SD memory cards. With batteries, of course, Canon prefers the Canon batteries. It has the electronic chips that reads how much power is left, which is very convenient for you. There are some aftermarket batteries that will work, and I have not heard of any problems that they cause with the camera, but they may not have communication, so you may not see whether it's a half-used or fully used or partially used battery, and so you won't have quite as much communication. With flash units, you could, of course, hook this up to any sort of studio system that you want. That's perfectly fine. If it's a TTL flash system, I tend to want to stay with the name brand manufacturer, so Canon in this case. The communication and the operation of the flash is just a lot easier. If you're just doing simple manual flash, there's a lot of inexpensive flash units that will do just as good a job at firing a flash. But if you want to keep that TTL communication and you want to do a lot of maybe the more sophisticated things that are options between the camera and the flash, I would stick with the Canon flashes. And as we go through the class, I'll show you the Canon available flashes and which ones I would recommend for different types of photography. Let's make sure your camera and my camera is ready for today's class. You want to have a charged battery. That'll take about 2.5 hours. We'll get you around 1,200 shots under normal photography systems. You want to have a lens on there, and the autofocus on Canon cameras is controlled on the lens section. So make sure you go over to the lens, make sure it's in the autofocus setting. Got a memory card in your camera? Turn your camera on. I'll do the same here on mine. Set the camera to the A+ mode. I'll be honest with you folks, this is not my favorite mode, but it's good for simple basic photography. And then I'm just going to go ahead and point my camera and take a photo and make sure that I'm getting a picture on the back of the camera. Everything seems to be good. Hopefully it is on your camera as well, because we're going to get rolling right here into the rest of the class.